Hey, welcome everybody to season 2 of the 7 Minutes to Better Selling podcast. I'm your host, Colin Lake. Now, Jason Gutman is a very interesting guy. I know him for about 20 years. He was my very first triathlon coach. But Jason, like many of us, not all of us, many of us, continues to evolve and reinvent and continue to improve like who he is and who he helps. So he is a Mayo certified wellness coach, Mayo Clinic certified wellness coach, National Board certified health and wellness coach, a certified nutritionist, a certified exercise physiologist. So like he is like really an expert in this idea of like, how do you get yourself to perform at your highest level on a consistent basis? So Jason, welcome. Thanks for spending some time.
It's great to chat with you, Colin.
Yeah. So Jason, I said, we know each other. It's about 20 years, maybe a little more than 20 years. I'm searching the internet, trying to find a coach to help me perform at a higher level from a triathlon perspective. And that's how we get connected, right?
That's exactly right. And we're working together for a few years, if I remember right.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you certainly got me faster and more competitive and more interested in the sport. And so I'm grateful for that and always will be. Yeah. So Jason, let me ask you this on behalf of the listeners. How do you go from like you graduate from college, you get into this idea of coaching triathletes? Like, how does that happen? And then you continue to evolve and improve your life. How do you do that?
Well, maybe a good way to answer that is to start with where I am today. And where I am is running a private practice as a wellness coach. And what that really means is helping people go from knowing what to do and having good intentions to living their lives, to taking great care of themselves in ways that help them thrive, in ways that help them optimize their happiness and health. And it really started with a more negative experience. When I was a teenager, I found myself overweight. And that's a very hard place to be as a teenager. And I'll spare you the details, but you can kind of imagine the things I went through. And sort of part two is I responded to that in a way that was adaptive in some ways, but maladaptive in other ways. And what I really did is I got really sucked into to exercise, to nutrition in what we could call some unproductive ways. I really overdid the exercise. And with nutrition, I was more in that restrictive kind of mindset. And what happened for me over the next 10 or so years is I had what we would consider outward success. I became a good athlete in many ways. I had the outward appearance of someone who was super fit. So I took that insecure teenager and certainly put him away. I certainly wasn't going to let the world view me as a fat kid. But eventually, my luck ran out, and that overdoing things and sort of punishing myself as opposed to taking good care of myself led to me being very unwell in my mid-20s in various ways.
You know, it's amazing how things happen in our youth that we may or may not be able to tie or draw the line back directly to them that impact us today. But there's so many things that happen to us when we are young that impact the way that we think, the way that we act, the way that we talk, the way that we interject in conversations, the way we retreat in conversations based on stuff that happened when we were young.
100%. And I would consider my adulthood, you used the word evolution a few times, but a healing and unfolding, an evolution. I often think of it as a return to my best self, and that's an ongoing evolution.
Yeah. By the way, I'm about to ask you another question, Jason, but for the listeners and for you, Jason, there's a podcast, not a podcast, there's a TED Talk called 100 Days of Rejection. I don't know if you've seen it, but there, you have not?
No.
It is really worth watching. It's funny. It is instructive. And it's a really nice story as well. But anyway, 100 Days of Rejection. So watch it if you can. Awesome. So Jason, the main reason we have you here is for you to weigh in on this idea of people at this stage of the game, meaning like how much information is at our fingertips, know what to do to perform at their best. Like information is right there. We know what we can do to perform at our best. There you go. Thank you, Simon. So that in mind, they don't always, or most don't perform at their best. So maybe I'll ask you, like, as a brief question of why do you think they don't? But more importantly, like what we're getting at in season 2 here is, how do you see people perform at their best? How do you perform at your best, or how do you help people perform at your best? You know, there's like really 4 questions in there, but just I'd love you to weigh in on all of those topics.
It's a huge question. It is the question I get to play with all the time, and I'll share a concise answer, and we can dig into it in any way you want to. The reason we fail in these regards is typically because what we're doing is we're working against human nature, and you want to learn to work with human nature. You want to leverage human nature, and I've developed an approach I call the 7 evidence-based keys to lasting behavior improvement and positive habit formation. And each and every one of them is about leveraging human nature. Get very clear on what you want. Get very clear on why you want what you want. Engage in small new behaviors in the direction of what you want. Tie your new behaviors to your interests. Tie your new behaviors to your strengths. Make doing your new behaviors as convenient as possible, and garner the personal and professional support that's most helpful to you. That's an overview. Each one of these things are cool things to dig into. The overarching thing to emphasize is this isn't sheer willpower. This is using human nature to push you up the mountain and make it easier.
By the way, where would they get those 7? Will you have those on your website? Do you have those fully formed out yet?
I have a special report on my website called How to Form Self-Care Habits That Truly Stick. It's complimentary on my website. You can you don't even have to download it. It'll be right there. Human beings are highly social animals, and we're better together. We do better when we're coached. We do better when we're mentored. We do better when we're well parented. And we also get a lot out of, being on the other side of the table and mentoring people, as you do, Colin. So highly encourage people not to try to go life alone or do hard things by themselves. And people can find me at puvema.com. That's the name of my practice/business, Puvema, Puvema, and puvema.com is my website.
My major takeaway is understand the why. Have someone help you build out those small steps in order to get to that, and then have that person or have someone else hold you accountable to it. That's worked very well for me. It sounds like it's working well for the hundreds of people that you help every day. So, Jason, thanks so much for spending time with us, and good selling, everybody.
It was a pleasure talking with you, Colin.